Hello and welcome to another standard video here in the post-rotation metagame. Today I'm taking a look at one of the early contenders for best deck in the format, which is the black-white sacrifice deck. And this deck didn't lose anything with rotation really, and even picked up a couple new tools, especially the Umbral Collar Zealot is an amazing addition for the archetype as a 2-mana 3/2 that can sacrifice another creature or artifact at will in order to surveil one. So 2-mana 3/2 is already decent stats, but having this free sacrifice outlet we can continuously use at instant speed is perfect, and getting to surveil one as a payoff is quite the improvement over Bartolome, which simply picked up additional +1/+1 counters. Now with the surveil one we can further fill the graveyard to eventually dig for a Raise the Past, and with a full enough graveyard this can just win the game on the spot, as we get to return all creature cards with mana value 2 or less from our graveyard to the battlefield. So if we have some random creatures returning and a sacrifice outlet such as the Zealot or maybe one of Bartolome, and then a card like Vengeful Bloodwitch saying whenever this creature or another creature we control dies, target opponent loses 1 life and we gain 1 life, we can very quickly just drain the opponent to death by sacrificing all the creatures we have in play, especially when a lot of our creatures will leave behind another token when they die. We've got a few copies of Nesting Bot leaving behind a servo token. Then there's also Infestation Sage, which is a bit better as it leaves behind a Flying Insect token, and there's a bunch more of these 1-drops we could be playing, but I'm diversifying my 1-mana creatures a little bit. So that's basically our main game plan. Sephiroth, while it cannot be returned with Raise the Past, is another very solid win condition that can also potentially do the job of a Vengeful Bloodwitch, as it will drain the opponent for 1 whenever another creature dies, so that also includes the opponent's creatures, and if 4 or more creatures died in 1 turn, we get to transform Sephiroth into the 1-winged angel, which will immediately make an emblem with that same Blood Artist ability, so that's also incredibly powerful. And Sephiroth can also draw us additional cards when it enters or attacks, so that can also help dig through the deck to eventually find or erase the past. And then another addition from Edge of Eternities is Servondame, a 2-mana 2/2 with Vigilance and Menace. Whenever another creature we control dies or is put into exile, we can put a +1/+1 counter on it and we gain 1 life. And then when Servondame itself dies or is put into exile, while its power is 4 or greater, we can destroy up to 1 target non-land permanent, so that can also give us an answer to problematic permanents, especially artifacts or enchantments that we may not typically be able to interact with. And then another important piece of the puzzle is Voice of Victory, as a 1/3 with a Mobilize 2 ability. So when the voice attacks, we get to make a pair of warrior tokens that are tapped and attacking, and we have to sacrifice those tokens at the beginning of our end step. So those tokens dying can also maybe trigger Sephiroth or the Bloodwitch, can also sacrifice them prematurely to the Zealot to surveil 1, and all those tokens entering also trigger the Snarling Gorehound to surveil 1 whenever a creature with power 2 or less enters, so that's also perfect for digging towards Raise the Past and filling the graveyard, so there's plenty of synergy throughout. And then a few more 1-drops that we haven't mentioned. A Greedy Freebooter lets us scry 1 and creates a treasure token when it dies. Can be helpful if we just need a little bit of extra mana to get to 4 mana to set up Raise the Past in the first place. And then a Forsaken Miner, also very synergistic with both Sephiroth and the Vengeful Bloodwitch, as both of their abilities target the opponent, which counts as committing a crime, so then we can pay a black mana to return the miner from our graveyard to the battlefield, where we can sacrifice it once again. And finally 2 copies of Corrupted Conviction as another small instant speed card draw effect. Sacrificing a creature as an additional cost to draw 2 can also make it easier to transform Sephiroth. Maybe if we're missing our sacrifice outlet, then we can still maybe attack, make some trades, or use our mobilized tokens, and then 1 more from Conviction might be enough to set up the transformation. And then the mana base also has room for 2 copies of the Delcoven Encampment, which, similar to the Voice of Victory, can also help us mobilize 2 essentially when we attack by paying 3 mana and tapping it, so that can also come in handy if the game drags out. And then we've got plenty of black-white dual lands, even picked up Godless Shrine and Edge of Eternities, and then we already had Concealed Courtyard, which did not rotate out unlike some of the other fast lands. Still have the black-white Verge, and then a few copies of Starting Town to round it out, since we do want access to a lot of black mana to cast most of our 1-drops, but eventually we'll need double white for Raise the Past, so it's a good thing that we have access to so many dual lands for fixing, so we can still play a relatively low land count while still having all our colors taken care of. Sephiroth, and other color pairs in Standard don't necessarily have it as good as black-white, thinking of blue-white for instance, which does not have access to its shock land yet, and also lost its fast land as Seachrome Coast rotated out, so some color pairs are definitely at a disadvantage when it comes to their mana base. But for now, let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, we're on the draw with a keepable hand. Facing turn 1 Swamp, Sephiroth was a good pickup. So might want to start with Nesting Bot. Then I do need to play Starting Town. Turn 2 Voice. Turn 3 Sephiroth sacking the Nesting Bots. Can also trigger off the Mobilize tokens perhaps. If they keep up instant speed removal, they won't be able to cast it once Voice is in play, so then they can only take out the Nesting Bots, so we end up maybe wasting their mana. But our opponent's got a Strategic Betrayal, so we don't get a leftover token now. Alright, do we still play Voice? I think so. Even though it's now vulnerable to another Strategic Betrayal. But the upside's the highest, I think. Opponent goes for the Annex, so kind of a reimagined Demons deck. We just want to attack and then play Sephiroth second main once we get those tokens. And then especially with the encampment, it's not too difficult to transform Sephiroth. So we'll see. Can they remove our Fabled Soldier? They could also be playing with the Darkness Crystal, which would be pretty nice tech to hate out the Black-White Sacrifice deck. Depressurize instead, and now Fell as well. Alright, so a bunch of spot removal. Still kind of plays into our Raise the Past game plan, so I don't really mind. This turn, Gorehound, Voice, Freebooter. Get to surveil a bunch more. And look for Raise the Past. Opponent's down to 11, but now they can maybe present a demon or a demon wall. Also counts. And another betrayal. Alright, now my graveyard I guess will be gone. So whatever I exile doesn't trigger the death trigger, so I wouldn't get to scry. I guess I still exile the Freebooter. Can still attack with Gorehound, activate Encampment at the very least. But yeah, all those Strategic Betrayals are starting to add up. Now I can just double spell. And yeah, I don't want to attack with the Voice anymore, I don't think. Our speed is going up. Might be relevant at some point. And there's Raise the Past. Still gonna keep it since we have Zealots. So now if the Voices die, it's not a huge problem. Opponent makes a Demon token. So this could still be a pretty sweet turn for us, as we get to attack, make a bunch of tokens, which also trigger the Gorehounds, and then we can bring everything back. So everyone can get in there, I think. Hope to mill as many creatures as possible. Conviction is tempting, but still gonna keep digging. So at least an extra Nesting Bot. And then of course we also get to surveil with the Zealots. Once the Voices are gone, our opponent could technically still have instant speed removal in my turn. Another Voice is good, so we can let damage happen. And then keep sacking more stuff to surveil. So yeah, despite a bunch of graveyard hate, we're still gonna pull off a decent Raise the Past. Would love to find a Blood Witch. And get to surveil a whole bunch more. Not erase the past. I mean, I would have kept it if we milled a few more creatures first. This one feels not that amazing. So, worst case scenario, opponent plays a Bloodletter, I take 12 and then another 4. So I'm not just dead. Yeah, I think I need to keep digging for something else. There's a Blood Witch, so if I keep Blood Witch on top, I can play it next turn, sack my entire board. If they deal with the Zealots, then it's not all that exciting, but I guess we still have triple voice. So that might be good enough. Ideally, of course, I would have milled it and then kept to Erase the Past instead. But I'm not going to be too picky. So we'll see what happens. Opponent's got another Annex. I guess another Annex and Bloodletter could still kill me. Alright, Bandit's Talent, we're safe. So, opponent's gonna maybe hang back. And then playing Blood Witch should seal the deal. Maybe this time don't attack with the Zealots, but everything else is good to go. And now I could dig for another Erase the Past, or a Sephiroth would be fine. But yeah, the game should just be over. We've got more than 10 creatures we can sacrifice. Could surveil, I guess it doesn't matter here. Could just let damage happen. Things are dying regardless. And there we go. So yeah, even through a little bit of graveyard hate, the deck can still operate. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a functional hand. Turn 1, let's just shock, so we have all our colors taken care of. Opponent on red-green. A landfall, it seems. Alright, voice, a decent pickup. Next turn we can maybe attack and then sack the tokens to Bartolome, as well as to the Conviction. Of course, Tifa, quite scary. And our deck does not have a lot of removal. If they're playing Escape Tunnel, they might have more fetch lines in hand. They're not forced to sack it now, but they are going to. So now Voice doesn't have a great attack. Servondam potentially a way to deal with Tifa. But yeah, still a tough spot. I guess I try Servondam. Attack. Miner cannot block, so may as well get in there. And then I can Conviction to grow Servondam some more. We have raised the past to get the voice back anyway. Sephiroth would have been good. So if Servondam dies, it gets to take something out. But yeah, we could just take 20 plus trample damage. Opponent's got a Mossborn, so they might be setting up for next turn then. So I can either play Bartolome with a plan of sacking Servondam, so we can take something out, but our opponent's also likely to have some hexproof tricks, so then just going for Sephiroth might be better. So I can start by attacking. Opponent takes it. Sephiroth, sack Serve on them. And then what's more dangerous, a 3-powered Tifa or a 1-powered Hydra? Hard to tell, they're both pretty scary in their own right. I'm gonna say maybe with Ride the Shoop of Hydra could be scarier. And then I can play Infestation Sage, keeping my life total as high as possible. Opponent's at 5 in the meantime, so we'll see. Erase the Past has 2 creatures to get back. And now a Vengeful Blood Witch can drain alongside Bartolome. So we should have it. Can also get back the Forsaken Miner. And the opponent scoops it up. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a decent hand. Gorehound into Voice. Into maybe another Voice. And then we're well set up to transform Sephiroth. Opponent is blue-white, so could be a more controlling build, which will never make things easy. But if we can resolve Voice somehow, then it's going to be a lot harder for the opponent to leverage their counter spells and other instant speed interaction. But yeah, this is likely getting countered. Alright, that resolves, so now our opponent can't cast anything. I'll keep Courtyard on top. And our opponent's forced to now main phase Get Lost. So now we can just resolve another Voice. And Sephiroth is a tough one. I already have one in hand. Would still be good to draw another one if the one in hand gets answered. So I'm gonna keep it on top. So then if I play another Sage, the Surveil is kind of wasted, but using the map token lets them see Sephiroth, but I guess they don't know that we have another one in hand. So I'll keep on top. Attack for 2. They want to play Sage in case they have the new 3-mana artifact that can exile all 1 and 2 mana artifacts and creatures. So we at least have a little left over. Alright, opponent's going to mill us, equal to their life total, so it is as per mill after all. Good to know, so now we just want to prioritize drawing Raise the Past, although they already milled 2 copies. So what's my sequence now? Probably still want to deploy Sephiroth, although there's a chance it gets swept up next turn. Still would drain them for a bunch. So yeah, let's just attack. Surveil, so I'm not looking to actively mill myself against the mill deck. 34 cards remain. Yeah, I have to be pretty careful. I'll keep land on top. And then can draw into it with Sephiroth. Versus playing a Blood Witch. Yeah, I think I still go for it. And just play tapped Starting Town. Opponent falls to 8. Let's see if they have a Day of Judgment, perhaps. Just another Get Lost. But yeah, they milled the other Sephiroth. But they're still at 8. So they are facing quite a bit of damage, and next turn, in fact, between Blood Witch and Zealot, we might be able to drain them to death. Or we could Raise the Past. And yeah, opponent just scoops it up. So a couple ways we could close it out here. Just interested to see if we had another Zealot in the graveyard. If we do, then it's pretty trivial to just Raise the Past and win the game, and yeah, we do have a Zealot. So then Raise the Past, bring back 4 or 5 creatures, can immediately sacrifice them. There's even a Blood Witch to drain them to death, so that makes it easy, but otherwise just going Zealot plus another Blood Witch can sacrifice the 2 tokens, that's already a bunch more damage, and then we can just sack the rest of our board if needed. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a a relatively unexciting hand. But we can start with Gorehound, follow up with a Nesting Bot, and then sack to draw. So we will see quite a few cards in the meantime. So still seems worth a shot. So next turn can still play the Verge. Opponent with a Headliner. So can play Nesting Bot and then still sack the bot itself. And a Zealot isn't all that necessary at the moment. We have double Conviction to sacrifice, so I'd rather find like a Raise the Past or a Sephiroth. And then I could leave Conviction available if they somehow decide to use Headliner on the Gorehound. We can sacrifice that instead. Or we could get an extra Surveil by sacking the Nesting Bot. Alright, Engineer, so this could be a Red Goblins. Does Headliner attack? It does not. Alright, there's Raise the Past, we'll keep that one. So now it's all about filling the graveyard as much as possible as we draw another Raise the Past. Alright, so I can just Conviction now, I suppose. Might draw into another 1 or 2 drop we can cast. Another Hound will do. And then could play Starting Town. So it enters untapped now, or I could play Encampment, although this could enter untapped later. Currently only have 2 creatures in graveyard. Yeah, I guess I'll go for Starting Town. Don't see myself activating the Encampment anytime soon, when we have double Raise the Past in hand. There's a Hell Squad Heavy, so nice 1-2-3 curve. We're okay trading off Gorehounds, since we'll just bring them back as the only interesting play we can make. But then we will get a bunch of Gorehound triggers, which will make it easier to then bring the rest back. So I think I just take 2. Now Encampment will also enter untapped. And get a bunch of triggers. Fill the graveyard as much as possible. The only card I would consider keeping on top is Sephiroth. And then we can pass it back. Ready to maybe Raise the Past again. Now if our opponent's got a Krenko, we could still be in trouble, since that can help them go wide. Gallery instead. Okay. We'll see how aggressive they get. Just the 1/1s. So I could just block with Nesting Bots, get the token, let that happen. And maybe wait another turn to Raise the Past again. Another Voice. Alright, that's a lot of creatures we can return right now if we'd like. Could also sack more to the Zealots before we take our draw step. But I guess I'll take my draw step first. Another 1-drop we can sacrifice. So let's start here. Ideally find a Blood Witch to drain them to death. So, sack that now. Opponent looking to maybe take out the Zealots. There's another one. So we have everything we need except Blood Witch to close it out. So it seems worth it to go digging. Another Encampment I don't need. Can even consider attacking. Damage happens. Sack some more stuff. Another miner. Can we get a Blood Witch on the last Surveil? We can. Alright, that should do it. Unless there's some instant speed graveyard hate I'm not aware of. That's a lot of Surveil triggers. And that should just win the game right now. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a fine hand. Get to start with a Gorehound. Turn 2 Voice off starting town. And that sets up the most Surveils as soon as possible. Against blue-white, Resolving Voice is also great if they're holding on to counter spells. Drawing a second encampment here is not ideal. Would love to draw Swamp first. And Zealots is maybe not needed here. It wouldn't be a bad draw, but I think we're aiming for Raise the Past. Drawing Sephiroth would also be a little bit more exciting. So opponent passes, we don't need to worry about counter spells. We may need to worry about the new Cage exiling 1 and 2 mana artifacts and creatures. So that's very much a concern. But still gonna play Servon Dam. Keep filling the graveyard. I'll look for Sephiroth. And then do I keep Miner back as a leftover? Yeah, maybe I should. Although it feels like if they have that artifact, we're in trouble regardless. Alright, Fabled Passage is entering tapped, so we're still good. Now if we find a sacrifice outlet, Servon Dam can also maybe answer whatever removal in artifact form they find. Gonna submit 0. And now encampment still enters tapped, but can go exploring. Another courtyard. And Raise the Past, there we go. Although our opponent does know about it. Do I bother playing Forsaken Miner? What's our graveyard situation look like? I've got a decent graveyard already. Yeah, I guess I'll play the Miner. Hope their sweeper is just a Day of Judgment to destroy instead of exile. And Miner adds a bit more pressure in case they had removal for Voice. Alright, base also a good way to stabilize. So, what happens if I Raise the Past? We get a ton of Gorehound triggers, we get a Zealot, so then Servon Dam can clear Beza. So we should be able to set up a decent attack. The only thing we're sadly missing is a way to drain the opponent, so maybe attacking first can Surveil with a Gorehound to set that up. But if we fail to get there, I might be a little sad. But yeah, I think we should just attack first, because we're getting everything back anyway. It's just we may not deal quite as much damage now. Another Zealot's good, and Sephiroth I should keep on top. Although that does mean I'm gonna waste all my Surveils that are coming up. Could have also considered using the encampment. So yeah, interesting spot. Maybe I should wait on the Raise the Past anyway, but now without Voice, our opponent can keep up counter spells instead. If our opponent does wipe the board next turn, we would still have some leftover insects. We get to Surveil, maybe digging for another Raise the Past. So maybe Sephiroth is not actually the card I need to keep. Yeah, it's a little awkward here. So I'm gonna have to decline Sephiroth in case there is another board wipe coming up. Then the best way to get back on the board is another Raised Past. If there are 5 mana Sweeper Exiles, then we're gonna be very sad. But at least Sunfall rotated out, so it would have to be the new one. So, can play a tapped Courtyard, pass. And then we can surveil a bunch more. Actually should have sacrificed the tokens with the Zealot, kind of forgot. Could have let us surveil a little bit more. But yeah, if we untap here, with our creatures in play, we should be fine. If they cast a Sweeper, then we can just sacrifice our entire board and try again. Day of Judgment, so let's go surveilling. Maybe should have kept Voice on top to then bring it back. But yeah, we're pretty desperate to find another Raise the Past. And then do I want a leftover token? Yeah, lots of surveil, so that's probably fine. But then of course the token would not stick around, so we may as well sacrifice it. Have we found any of our Blood Artists yet? I don't think we have, so that's another card we would love to put in the graveyard. We get a few more looks. Alright, there's Raise the Past, so I can keep that, and then I would not have my Blood Artist yet to actually close it out. But it might be greedy to get rid of Raise the Past if we then fail to find another one. So I might have to keep that one on top, get to Raise the Past, everything's back, and then we're pretty much in the same position, except we have even more creatures to work with. So I guess that's fine. Does this exile? Just destroys. So yeah, if we had one of our Blood Witches, we could just end the game. But that will have to wait. Now we do get to surveil a bunch more. Sephiroth would be nice if we had a way to draw it right now, but we don't. So then, once again, if there is a board wipe, I'm better off finding another race, and there's the Blood Witch. Alright, so now it's just a matter of finding a third copy of Raise the Past. And then we should get there. Alright, there we go. Keep that on top. And no other effects, pass a turn. And then even if their board wipe does exile everything, we would still be able to just sacrifice everything in response. Opponent does have another split up. Yeah, I'm just not gonna bother sacking stuff. Let's just let that happen. We still get a bunch of random tokens. And yeah, the Serve on Dam life gain trigger still happens, so there's no real reason to sacrifice individually. Alright, and then now we can finally Raise the Past, bring everything back. Go through 51 triggers, or I could just sacrifice the things I have in play with our opponent at 10. So yeah, if your plan as a control player is just to cast Day of Judgment over and over, you may not be able to get there. If the sacrifice opponent can string together enough Raise the Pasts. I guess I missed my window on encampment since I skipped through it. But I think we'll be fine now with a Blood Witch. We can end it in a multitude of ways. Alright, sweet. GG's. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a keepable hand. Starting with the Gorehound. And then we get to surveil when playing Miner. Can sack it to the Conviction. And just want to hit our land drops for Raise the Past, pretty much. Yeah, close call here whether I should play Verge or Starting Town, because if I draw more fast lands, I may regret playing the Verge now. But against the green Rabbit deck, my life total also matters. And Voice we are happy to put in the graveyard. So I can offer the trade Gorehound and Recruit. Conviction the Miner. As our opponent plays a Warren Guard. And another Recruit. And do we get to trade? Opponent doesn't offer. It's probably a smart move on their part. Find another Raise the Past. Alright, so we've got most of the pieces we need. So if I go Sage plus Zealots, I guess we'll see what we surveil first. If it's a land enabling Raise the Past, that might change our sequencing. Now Zealot gives us the best chance of casting a Raise the Past next turn, as we can sack a bunch of creatures to surveil even more. Opponent's going to make some more tokens. At least there's no Convoke spells that they can follow that up with. And Warren Guard attacks. So, could offer the trade for Zealots, since we would bring it back if we can Raise the Past. Could also just block with the Sage and sack it, and then we get to surveil again, so we're not all in on Raise the Past in case we fail to get there. But we're pretty likely to get there. What happens if I block with everyone? Sack Sage, I get to surveil again. Go to leftover token. Sack Gorehound and then trade. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, pretty much need to Raise the Past at this point. Another Sage is not what we need. Courtyard doesn't quite do it here. Alright. So sack Gorehound now. And then I might still need to sack the Insect as well. Freebooter doesn't quite do it. I would set it up for next turn, but that might be too late. Alright, there we go. Godless Shrine to the rescue. Raise the Past. Get a lot of Gorehound triggers, setting up our second Raise the Past. And I mean, Sephiroth is pretty much ideal, but we can probably find another one. Maybe put some more creatures in the graveyard, like a Blood Witch. Alright, fine, I'll keep Raise the Past. Don't think we'll need 3, but you never know. Pass a turn, and then just a matter of playing the Blood Witch. Quest Caller pumps their team. Happy to set up some trades. Can also surveil more thanks to the Gorehound. Opponent does have a Sheltered by Ghosts. Alright, that does maybe complicate matters a little bit. Going for Zealot makes sense. Alright, so I'm definitely sacking some stuff here. So let's say we sack Freebooter to get a treasure. Or maybe start with Miner, since that cannot block anyway. And then I get rid of the other Raise the Past. Probably should have binned it to begin with. Sack a bunch of Infestation Sages, which let me surveil with a Gorehound as well. And then we're looking for another Sacrifice outlet, pretty much. Alright, another Raise the Past. They're making it difficult, but it's not really what I need. We want another Zealot, or Bartolome would do. And then we should be able to just end the game next turn. Serve on Dam's not bad either, but we can also get that back for free. Say no to Starting Town. Nesting Bots. Okay, of course our opponent does still get to attack here. Don't really need the treasure unless we draw land and then I can double spell. So maybe I keep sacking the insects or Voice of Victory. So with a land, I would be able to play Blood Witch and Erase the Past, but without a way to sacrifice everything, I can't really win the game on the spot. So, yeah, let's keep digging. Sank those insects. Guess I can sank the Gorehound too now. Not taking lethal to their attack at least, so that's reassuring. Another Sephiroth. Can't quite play it and Raise the Past. I would get another treasure from the freebooter, of course, but I don't have a sacrifice outlet to set that up. So yeah, say no to Sephiroth. Sank the insect, and then I'll have to decide if I sank the treasure. There's another Sephiroth. Yeah, that's not what I need. So then at that point, just sank the treasure. Sephiroth number 4. 3 in a row. That's pretty unlikely to happen, but there we go. So, opponent gets to smash for 12. Put me to 6. Found the Zealots at long last. Just had to go 1 card deeper. Alright, so we don't just win, but we've got our defenses set up. And then now, how many cards do we have left? 25 still. So I'm not too afraid of decking. So now I can maybe dig for what's even left. We've seen most copies of Erase the Past, don't need Bartolome anymore. Do I have another Erase the Past left? Don't need another Zealot. And maybe I should look if I have another Erase the Past before going too deep. 1, 2, 3, so there should be 1 remaining. But yeah, next turn just playing Blood Witch plus Zealots could be enough. Okay, I just noticed we only have 1 card left in the deck, so I got a bit carried away here. Kutzil's Flanker out of nowhere, exiling our graveyard. Alright. Maybe I did forget about Erase the Past, because we do not have any left in the deck. Luckily we do have a Zealot. So, Surveil with an empty library. Yeah, how did I miss Erase the Past? Doesn't matter. Just gonna drain them to death with triple Blood Witch. Who needs a library anyway? And we even get to speed up the process of surveilling with an empty library, so this was actually a genius move. That's gonna speed up this process significantly. So yeah, it got kind of sketchy for no reason. Sheltered by Ghosts messed us up a little bit. The flanker, you know, was kind of scary, but didn't really end up mattering too much. So it was all about just finding that sacrifice outlet with enough Blood Witches on the battlefield. So yeah, you can start noticing a lot of decks packing Graveyard Hate, specifically for the sacrifice decks, but of course there's still some powerful zombify strategies that are left over from the previous standard. So yeah, definitely be prepared for this matchup, since I believe it's one of the early contenders for best deck in the format, but it's not impossible to hate out with the right Graveyard Hate. In the preview event, I actually tried this black-white deck and faced CGB, who was trying out the Darkness Crystal, which is an incredibly effective hate card, as it just exiles your creatures, so you can't sacrifice stuff for value, and then the opponent also gets to gain life in the process, so that card's very effective as well. So those are some cards you might want to try out if you're trying a more controlling strategy instead. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.